Faith Dickey. Thank you so much for coming and taking the time from your busy schedule up there in Moab. And I first came across you with the Apple Vision Pro show adventure, where we see you up on the fjords, 3,000 feet in the air, slacklining. Obviously, that's what you do for a living. What an amazing uh, acrobat you must be. And I'm sure it's not because you're fearless. I'm sure it has something to do with you lean into the fear and you figure out what the fear can teach you. So thank you for showing up. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about relationships.
That sounds great. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So of course, anybody that's been in the media world saw the Apple Vision Pro launch and began to look at some of the incredible content that was created around that device. And one of the first things that I encountered, of course, is your face breathing, sort of nervous, right here, where you could, it was visceral. Here's the Apple Vision Pro, and here's Faith. It was an incredible experience. I'm imagining the publicity around it and maybe some of the rest of the well, I don't have any idea. That's the question. So how did the release of the Apple video change your perspective or change what you were doing? Maybe not at all. And
Actually, it
go
didn't
ahead.
change much. Yeah, it didn't change a whole lot. I think because I've been doing professional highlighting for so long. I mean, I'm in my 15th year. And the Apple Vision Pro is definitely one of the most unusual projects I've done. However, not that many people have access to it, right? So if it was a widely used device, I think far more people would see it.
Yeah.
What's really cool about it is I've probably had more just personal messages from people saying how much they appreciated it and appreciated what I talked about in the video than any other project I've done. I did a really big Volvo semi truck commercial in 2012, and that was sort of what jump started my career as a professional highliner. And that I got way more publicity for that. That led to way more work. But it was like a viral commercial, so it like did its rounds for years. So that was a little bit different. I feel like that was more of just like a publicity thing. I feel like with the Apple Vision project, it was a really quality movie. So it was really neat and it was just a really fun job for me because it was so in my wheelhouse. I used to do far more professional highline work, and I'm now running a guiding business in Moab where I teach people how to highline and climb. So I've kind of pivoted my own, focus. So it
Yeah.
was really neat to be contacted again for a highline job that was,
Yeah.
sort of hailed back to my career as a highliner. And it really was about my own narrative too. So it felt very authentic to me. The one part of it actually that is less authentic is that the line wasn't actually hard for me to walk, but we
Yeah.
needed there to be more of a story, and so they asked if I could make it more challenging.
Oh, wow.
So it was a bit of acting in that regard, but the story itself was true. It was very much like my words, my answers to an interview that we formulated into the script.
Uh, so our fear of you being 3,000 feet was more for us, and what you weren't afraid. That's what
I wasn't afraid. I mean, it was the highest high line I'd ever been on, like straight drop to the ground wise, which was really cool. But the length of the high line is generally what makes it harder. And it was a very short high line, so it was actually very easy for me to walk. And
I
I was
see.
just planning to go there and walk it back and forth, no problem. And the director
I
was like, "So, we don't think it'll be that interesting if it's easy."
Yeah. That's
I was like,
cool.
"Fair enough, fair enough."
Wow. So in all this, and through following you for the last year on Instagram and things like that, it's clear you have a boyfriend,
I do.
and
Fiance,
one
actually.
oh fiance even. Congratulations, thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
great. And so, what came to my mind in getting ready for this show is sort of to imagine the complexities of your life and the scheduling and traveling and things that you do. How did you manage to, and I'm assuming maybe he's a high heights and climbing type person as well. Yeah. Okay. So, how do you manage um, finding and then maintaining a healthy relationship with your schedule and the type of work that you do?
Well, I suppose, and we should at some point backtrack because I went through plenty of less than functional relationships to get to this point. My partner and I have been together for 7 years now. We
Okay.
just got engaged last fall. Um, and he was a highliner previously. That's how I knew him. We were friends for years before we started dating. And he's a climber. He's not really into highlining anymore, to my dismay. So he's not a good highline buddy anymore, but we do climb together. Um, but we both have pretty unusual schedules. My schedule as a guide too is that I'm sort of at the whim of tourism and visitation in Moab. And so sometimes I get last minute bookings. I never know my schedule ahead of time. It sometimes could be really busy for like a week or 2 weeks, and then I can have like a whole week with no work. So it's all over the place. Not to mention these occasional jobs I get that may involve international travel. I still go to Europe every year in summer, and I go for about a month. I do a Highline Festival in Czech Republic for women every year. I've been doing it for 15 years. Haven't been able to quit it. Every year I'm like, this is the last one, and then I have such a good time, I have to do it again.
Oh, that's so
So
cool.
we spend a month apart every year. And I think part of what makes it possible in my relationship is that we have a very stable foundation. So we really trust each other. We have, we're not going to just like fall out of love by spending some time apart. He's also an EMT. So he typically works 36 to 48-hour shifts, a couple times a month. So actually, currently he's in nursing school. So he's around a lot. Um, but normally he's working, I would say every like 6 to 8 days he would work a 36-hour, 48-hour shift. So he'll be gone for like a chunk of time. So we both have unusual schedules, and I think part of what works with us is we communicate our schedules, and we try to make sure that when we do have time together, we are actually together. And it's always a work in progress. There's times I notice that we're both kind of tired from our day-to-day work, and time we could be spending quality time together, we're both staring at our screens next to
Yeah.
each other. It's
Yeah.
so easy to like fall into those routines, right? And so sometimes it's like we notice and like, oh, we should try to like, at least if we're both too fried to do anything, watch a movie together, or if we can muster the energy to do something together instead of staring at screens separately, that'd be
Yeah.
good.
And you said actually together. What a great phrase, right? So how do you drop back into consciousness, present mindfulness in your partnership? You know, how do you
We
do
go
that?
do things together. So we plan a day. We both have, luckily we're both rock climbers. So it's an activity we share. I mean, I really sympathize with people who don't share any activities with their partners. I kind of learned a long time ago, like in my mid 20s, like if my partner doesn't share any activities with me, we're probably going to have a hard time. Because if you have
Yeah.
activities you're passionate about, it takes up a lot of time in your life. And so I don't think you have to share all your activities, but I think you need at least one thing that you both like to go do together. And I have a hard time imagining that as like, some people just like to watch movies. And I don't consider that as like an activity you share because you're not actually engaged with each other.
Yeah.
So, at least going climbing, like we're going there, we're hiking together, and then we're taking turns climbing and belaying each other. So we
Yeah.
spend time together in that way. We had a unique beginning of our relationship too because we were both dirtbags, we were both nomadic, we lived in our cars. So we got to sort of start our relationship spending a ton of time together. Like
Okay.
immediately traveled together for like a whole year.
Oh,
And yeah, so it's almost like the front end was like tons of time together with a few trips apart here and there. But there
wow.
was a period of time where I mean, I would say like we cooked dinner together almost every single night. Like probably 5 to 6 days of a week, we cooked dinner together. So even if, we're busy and like we go through the occasional time of like, let's just snack for dinner, we don't have the energy to cook, like most days we're at least cooking dinner together. And so it's that, you asking this question is kind of the first time I've like reflected on the fact that actually compared to probably the average, we do manage to spend some quality time together.
Yeah.
It's just not what I'm used to from the beginning of like gallivanting around the world together for 4 months at a time.
Yeah, I'm gonna zone in or zoom in on something that I'm really tuning into. It's actually sort of the thrust of my next book about relationships, and that is about that joy. I call it passion, um, but I've settled back on being able to hear and listen for the joy of that other person, right? So you shared a critical passion, one of your life's works, right, with your partner. Tell me about some times maybe in previous relationships where that was the struggle, right? There's like, we're so far into different worlds that it's hard to find the places to connect.
I think like there's so many phases of life, right? And my last two relationships, I was in my 20s, which is such a different phase of life than even your 30s and your 40s. And I think it just continues to sort of shift, basically like what your needs are and your values and what you want from life. But in my 20s, it was really like the peak of my Highline career, and I had so many opportunities, and I had a very hard time giving any of those up. And when I did give them up, I resented my partner. And so my last relationship, my partner was a few years older than me, so he was sort of, about to be 30. So he was really interested in getting a career and, like putting roots down. And I was like in my mid 20s. I wanted to continue traveling around the world. Yeah. And like enjoy these opportunities I had. And so every time I didn't take those opportunities, I resented him and he resented me for leaving, for taking the opportunities. So we just constantly had this tension between us. And there were other issues too. Like I didn't grow up with examples of healthy relationships. I grew up with a single mother who struggles with mental illness. Like I didn't have any good example. So I didn't know how to navigate those problems in the first place. And so, in my like earlier days, I just felt, I guess I was really trying to make something work that from the outside seemed so obviously doomed. And I was unable to accept it because I really loved the guy. And between that relationship and this relationship, I had a few years of sort of not committing to anybody. It was actually really good for me. I dated some crazy people, I dated some nice people, and I just like had a great time. And I really was selfish and I focused on myself. And I told every person I dated, hey, I don't really want to be serious. Like, I'm going to travel around and do what I want. So I'm down to spend time together. But like, I was clear. I communicated what I was able to offer. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean there weren't problems. Obviously, like it always seems like it's going to go great, and it never really does. But I learned a lot, and I was able to kind of spend a few years just like doing what I didn't do in the relationship before, which was just like living the life I wanted to live. And I actually think, and my partner now and I, like, we've done some therapy together, and occasionally we go back to therapy. Like, we're both believers in therapy.
Right.
And
Right.
I think you only have the tools that you've grown up with, and that, you can learn some on your own. But a lot of times, like, I think the metaphor I liked to use, it was like you're trying to change a light bulb with a hammer. Like that's what you learned in your house growing up. So every time the light bulb's out, you're just like hitting it with a hammer and trying to make it work. And that's how I dealt with problems in relationships. And so I'm so much better equipped now because I've done my own therapy and I've gone to therapy with my partner. And I know one thing I did too between the last relationship and this one was I kind of made like an intention list of what I wanted in a partner. So I was becoming ready to compromise. I was like getting to the point where I was like, okay, I don't need to selfishly just pursue my own things forevermore. I'm ready to compromise and find a partnership that works.
Yeah.
But I knew I really wanted a partner who was interested in self-work and personal growth and the
Yeah.
growth of the relationship.
Yeah.
And I think you really have to be on the same page. I mean, imagine anyone listening to your podcast is probably interested in these things, right? Because it's the topic
Yeah.
of your podcast.
Yeah.
So, like, it's just not going to work with someone who's not also interested in those things. And
Right.
so I honestly feel like that's maybe the underlying reason my current relationship is working so well, is that we're both able to recognize that we're always works in progress, that we can always be better, that there's always another way to learn to be with another person. And so even if we go through periods of like kind of bliss and no problems, eventually there's going to be a problem and we're going to have to navigate it. And so a lot of it is kind of, figuring out when to compromise and when to be selfish, because you can't give up everything. If you give up all of your pursuits and all of your passions for a relationship, you're going to be resentful and unhappy.
Yeah.
But if you don't give up anything, you're not really a partner. You're
Right.
like two individuals trying to like share a life together.
Right.
And that's something that definitely like changed for me getting older and like learning how to, relate to people was like, I think our culture can get really hyper focused on individualism. And, we had this kind of huge surge of like self help culture, which is really great. I learned so much from self help books, but sometimes you can get so wrapped up in your own self that you are unable to like share your life with another person. And so I know that like coming from this time when I was gallivanting around the world and had all these really cool opportunities, I never felt like I should answer to anyone about whether or not I took those opportunities. Versus now, my decisions and my partner's decisions, they have a lot to do with each other and how it
Yeah, you
affects the other
interweave,
person.
right? You interweave
Yeah,
your choices. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so how did you get from no good examples, right? No good examples in your family history to where you are now? Were there, other than a commitment with your current, with your fiance, to evolve and grow and continue to do therapy and push forward when things are hard? Where did you learn? And has it just been through, experience and pushing through, or were there any sort of seminal moments or books or anything that sort of unlocked for you how to be in a healthy relationship and how to really, it's a dance,
Yeah.
right? It's just a dance. And anyway, so tell me about some things that helped you get from A to B. B being sort of where you are now and optimistic, engaged with a loving partner, that you're building a life together.
I think the really pivotal point in my sort of relationship maturity was this last breakup. So my last relationship was about 4 years long, and we were so codependent with each other. And I had heard the word codependence, but I didn't fully understand it. A lot of times we just think of codependence as being dependent on another person, but that's actually one symptom that you might not even have. And we were friends with this married couple who were, we were in our 20s, him late 20s, me mid 20s, and we were friends with this couple who were both therapists, and they were in their 50s. And they were really good friends of ours. I knew that we knew the guy from highlining. He was like got into highlining in his 50s, which was badass. His name is
Nice.
Tim. Loved him to death. And so, I would go hang out with Tim and just complain about my relationship all the time. And I think I really needed a therapist, but I didn't have one. So I just complained to my friend because he was a therapist. And when we finally, like the pot boiled over and we broke up, Tim recommended a few books to me. And one of them is called Facing Codependence by Tia Melody.
She's the
And
best.
she's the best. And so basically I went through this, 2 week period where my partner and I were like breaking up. I was devastated. My world was crumbling around me. I was so like I had everything riding on that relationship, despite it being pretty dysfunctional. And I had changed everything. I moved from Europe back to the US to be with him. I'd sort of given up like all these highline opportunities to be with him, So I like wasn't ready to let it go. Like, oh, I put so much into this. And so kind of during this phase of like us slowly breaking up and painfully breaking up, I read that book and it was like a light bulb went off. It just described all of these issues that I'd dealt with for my entire life that I'd never had the name for and didn't understand. It explained my mom, it explained my childhood. And so that book really just opened my eyes, and it gave me the space between like my codependent reactions of myself. So, codependency isn't who you are. It's just a reaction to the world around you. And so by reading it and understanding it, I was able to then, when I started to have a reaction, I was able to kind of step back from it and look at it and be like, okay, is how I'm reacting an appropriate response, or is this coming from a place of codependence? And that just like completely changed me as a person. And it's not like I snapped my fingers and was no longer codependent. I mean, even the way Pia Melody talks about it is something you can go into recovery from. It's not something you
It sounds like though, it sounds like you did, right? So you went into your 2 years in the desert of I am taking care of me and what I want to do, right? So you broke out of that. What you described for me was then you spent a couple of years like wandering and
yes,
being very self-aware and very self-directed and protective, and maybe that's what opened up your heart and your space when your fiance arrived back in your life. You're a completely different person at that point, right? Because you've
true.
been, yeah,
Yes. I mean, I suppose if you think of like a 3-year time period as a snap of the fingers, then yes, in a way.
yeah, yeah,
It was, you know, what was different too is when I started the relationship with my current fiance, I was so open to it being whatever it was going to be. You know, I think in my last relationship, I was trying to control the situation because it wasn't meeting my needs. And so I was so controlling because, I mean, my ex had plenty of issues and he was so unreliable and would lose his shit all the time, lose his wallet, he was kind of a disaster of a human. And it was so frustrating because I so much wanted him to grow up and sort of be something he wasn't. And I was trying to change him and control him. And, you know, by kind of recognizing that in myself, I was able to be less controlling. And it wasn't an overnight thing. I still, you know, dealt with that in friendships, just like trying to let things be and not have control over them all the time. But when I started this relationship with my current partner, whose name is Michael, I was much more open to it going whichever direction it went. I wasn't like, you know, I'm going to marry this guy and ride off into the sunset. I was like, I'm attracted to this person. I want to pursue this and see what happens, but I'm okay if it doesn't work out or doesn't end up the way I would like it to end up. I'm going to accept him exactly as he is. I'm not going to try to change him. And it was just such a more mature place to start a relationship than kind of like, oh, this person isn't exactly what I want them to be. Let's see if I can like get them to be what I want them to be. Yeah. And so it was nice too because, you know, we both started the relationship kind of without an idea what it was going to be. It was sort of surprised us both. You know, we just like fell in love and kind of we're both really scared for a moment of like, oh God, love equals pain. You know, and we still are blown away, you know, that we've been together 7 years. And it's just like, it feels so stable. And like, I feel like we really complement each other. You know, I'm kind of an ADHD person. I'm involved in a lot of different things in a lot of different ways. I need to have my, you know, like fingers in every pie. And he's much more like simple. Like he wants to have like 3 important things happening at any one point in life. He's very calculated. He's not ADHD at all. And so I feel like, you know, he really helps me to kind of have routine, which is really good and really stabilizing for myself. And I feel like I help him to be a little more spontaneous and you know, build more social relationships and be a little less introverted. So I also think part of our success is just about like having kind of complementary personalities.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
We don't bring out the worst in each other.
Yes. And one of the things you started talking about when you first started talking about Michael is compromise, which can sound like a difficult word. That to me is like, oh, wait a minute, because my radar went off. I was like, okay, hold on, I'm going to lean in and listen, right? Because there's a fine line, I think, and this is just from my history, there's a fine line between compromise and then what I call settling.
Yes.
Right? And so you didn't settle, but you found the person that you wanted to compromise with, that you wanted to schedule your life with. And that's really what it's required to stay in a long-term relationship. You've got to evolve. You've both got to be willing to move and change and be flexible. And then you have the commitment to be together. But I think and where I was going is what I think also there needs to be some aspirational aspect to your relationship, right? You're still growing together. You still see the mountains that you're going to climb together. And for me, that's really important to know that, this person's coming with me, and we have a similar summit that we're headed for. We have other summits too, but so how is this relationship more of an aspirational collaboration rather than compromise or settling or diminishing yourself, maybe like you did in one of those earlier relationships?
I think probably because we want the same things. And, what was unique about this relationship, as opposed to other relationships I've had that were longer, was like we started it in such an open and honest way. Like we were really able to talk about everything we wanted, that we were scared of, that we'd experienced, other relationships, and in a way where there was no shame or, judgment, and no one was hurt. It was like we were able to kind of start it, and maybe being friends first was part of why it was unique in that way. But it's like, I said straight off the bat, like, I want to have kids. That's something I want in my future. And, I'm not trying to start a relationship with someone who doesn't want that. And so it was just like, we kind of shared our values right off the bat. And I mean, maybe that's kind of one of the benefits of getting older is like, you give less fucks and you're sort of like, hey, I don't have all the time in the world to like, dance around these subjects. And so it was just nice. The more we talked about the future we wanted, the more we wanted the same things. And we both, had been nomadic for a long time, and we both were over it and over traveling all the time. And we both really wanted to go somewhere and put roots in. And so we talked about where those places could be and decided on one together. And we moved to Moab, and we had a really hard time the first year because neither of us had paid rent anywhere in so long. We just didn't really remember how it all worked, and there's a housing crisis here. We moved 5 times, and we went through some pretty big trials just in like our lives. We lived in these really shitty situations, tons of stress. He was out of money. We had to get, find jobs in the winter. It was just like a lot of trials and tribulations in life. And I mean, the fact that we were able to like stick it out together, to me, says a lot to just the foundation we have. And, now it's like we're going to get married, and we have that to look forward to, and we want to have kids, and we have that to look forward to. And I feel like we've both sort of supported each other as we've figured out what we wanted to do as individuals. He spent the last few years being an EMT, which isn't really a sustainable job, income-wise or schedule-wise. It's like you lose all the sleep. So he's been like, bouncing between ideas of what he wants to do. We both chose freedom and travel for our 20s, so we didn't get on career paths. And so it's like we got on career paths later in life. I went through this sort of transition of no longer being an elite athlete that was like had all the world records and was getting job after job for that, and I had to sort of pivot and think about what I wanted to do. And I bounced through several different jobs before I decided to start this guiding business, Elevate Outdoors. And so it's like we've been able to have space for our own pursuits and our own self-development while coming back together every night and being together, Yeah. So for me, it's a lot about this balance of having enough time and space for yourself and enough time and space in the relationship. And, I recognize too that, and so, like we joke about how vanilla we are, we're gonna get married, we're gonna have kids, like we've got the nice house, and like, like our life isn't super spontaneous or exciting like the lives we lived when we were younger. And so perhaps in 20 years, cattail. We have a cat as well, so it's funny. Maybe in 20 years, we'll need to do something to add excitement. I mean, but I guess, I grew up in kind of a chaotic house, and so for me, the stability, it doesn't feel boring. It feels very healing to have the stability that I can count on. And as long as I have enough space to find excitement for myself, I'm happy. Like sometimes I fantasize about being an author, or and I think about like, oh, maybe I would just take myself to Scotland for a week on a writing trip and, just like hike and stay in Scotland and write. Those are things that I kind of fantasize about. And they actually don't include my partner because I actually don't need him to be there because he's my support structure. He's the person I want to come back to. I don't need him everywhere I go, but I want him as my foundation that I'm coming back to.
That's you hit on it. You hit on another one of these pieces of the formula or the recipe, and it's almost like I've written it in as a sixth love language. I love the love languages. They're massive, but there's one that I've added on called distance. And it is the ability to go separate, do your thing, and it's so important for me. And then you bring back all this new information and new
stuff to talk about.
Yeah, and so
Totally.
yeah, that's awesome. And I have a so it's funny. One of the other things you talked about, and you're in one of my favorite words right now is called liminal. So you're in between. So you're in between your previous life and your 7 years so far. You're gonna get married, but in the phases of life, the next phase will be utterly transformational, right? When you actually do have a child and you become a parent, everything changes, and nobody can tell you what to expect. It's just gonna happen. And it's lovely, it's fantastic, and it sounds like, as you did when you broke up in your last relationship, you went and sought yourself, you found a partner now, and it's almost like another frontier, another summit, and that's trivializing it because it's, the creation of something brand new. But I love the idea of, I have to say it as a joke. How do I do this not as a joke? A fake Dickie as a trad wife, right? That's the new phrase on Instagram is trad wife. These super hot women, sort of doing the mom home thing, and it's like, I don't see that.
You're not completely wrong because I do love gardening and like preserving food, and I'm like, dang it, I'm like kind of hate trad wife culture, but I also like kind of relate to some of it.
Take what you like and leave the rest, right?
The other thing I wanted to mention too is, part of one thing I definitely remember going through too in that like 3-year window when I wasn't really in any serious relationships, but I was dating around and traveling and kind of being selfish. I knew I wanted to have children and find a partner that I was gonna like be with for a long time. But I think growing up with a single mom too, there's, you always have this kind of fear, like I'm going to end up alone, like my parents. And so I kind of went through this reflection of like, well, I want these things. I want my life to look this certain way, but I also don't want that to dictate my happiness. I want to know that I can be happy inside of myself, no matter what my, family life looks like. Like if I end up being a batty old woman in a van with a bunch of cats who's climbing really hard, I still want to be happy, even if I don't have the like nuclear family that I would like. And I think that was really good for me to go through too, to say like, it's good to have a goal and it's good to have things you want to experience in life, but if you put all your happiness eggs in that basket, it's very fragile. And then you put so much pressure on that, And so, and obviously, if my relationship ended right now, like I would be devastated. Like I really love my partner and we've invested in so many things together. But at the same time, like I know I would survive. I know I'd be okay. And I know he would be okay because both of us have enough like intact self-worth that we're not basing it all on the life we've created with another person. And so it's like that combination of like you're a team, but you're still an individual, and you have to make sure that that individual is happy as well. And actually, I derive a lot of happiness from my relationship working. So if I was purely selfish and only did things for myself, my relationship wouldn't work. So, and it's interesting. I don't know like how much this is a wormhole we could go down, but there's a lot of polyamorous people in the town we live in. Oh. And like that has become so popular, and I think it's totally fine. I think people should like be in relationships however they want. But when I see those people, I just like don't understand how they do it, because I have limited time and energy. And so when I'm giving this time and energy to my partner and myself and my friends, I can't fathom having more to give to other romantic relationships. And so I feel like I would be kind of cutting this pie of energy into smaller and smaller slices.
Yeah.
And so it's just so wild to me, because being with one person and having this kind of monogamous relationship, like I'm able to really be judicious with my pie and like, make sure, and like sometimes, you might give a slightly bigger piece to your partner when they need it. And sometimes you might give a slightly bigger piece to yourself when you need it. But yeah, I have no desire to try to like split the pie into smaller pieces.
Nice. Is there something in your history of getting here where you, or a moment or something that you remember, sort of when you realized happiness is an inside job, right? It's about you. It's about your approach to life. Then you can start finding someone to join you on that journey, right? So is there a place where you were struggling maybe and found your own inner joy?
I think it was really a result of learning about codependence, because it kind of gave an explanation for why I always felt responsible for my ex-partner's feelings. If he was unhappy, I was unhappy. If he was unhappy, I wondered what I did wrong. And vice versa too. I needed him to act a certain way for me to feel a certain way. And so I think like kind of understanding that was coming from a form of codependency and this kind of enmeshment and not having any separation made me realize like I was in charge of those things. And it doesn't mean you're going to be happy every single day. And sometimes it means the world to have your partner hug you when you feel like shit. It's not like you don't need anyone else, but it's like I still need to sort of be the captain of my ship when it comes to my own happiness. And if I'm going a long period not feeling happy, I don't want to blame my partner when it's not them. And that's not to say sometimes it's important to like reflect on your relationship and say like, is this relationship meeting my needs? There's this line in I read Pia Mellody wrote the other book, Facing Love Addiction, which is so great. It's about the avoidant and love addict relationship, and how we often fall into these dynamics of there's one person's avoidant, one person's like addicted.
And which are you? And
I flip-flop. So, but historically, when I'm really into it, I'm the love addict, and I usually find avoidance. So that's more common for me. But there's a line, the back of the book has this chapter about what is a healthy relationship. And I was like, this should be a standalone book that gets passed out to everyone, because for all the reading, I still actually didn't know what a healthy relationship was.
What it should look like, yeah.
Yes. And what the line that stuck out to me the most was, you're never going to have all your needs met all the time. But if most of your needs are met most of the time, it's probably a healthy relationship. And that has been like the guiding force for me in relationships since then. And I really feel like that's what I've achieved. Like, there's times where I'm going to need to meet some of my own needs. Like my partner's in nursing school right now. He's really occupied with studying, and like he may not be able to pay enough attention to me according to what I would like. But I'm going to find that need met with my friendships and with, my own pursuits, because he's got a thing going on and it's not forever, it's temporary. Right. So things like that. And I'm sure it works vice versa too. When I'm really busy in my guiding season and I'm exhausted, there's probably times where he's like, hey, like I'm still over here.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, we're getting close to a wrap here, because I want to give you back your time. Thank you. For coming.
You opened a can of worms with me, because I love talking about relationships. The last thing I'll say is that you have to know what your needs are. So many people are like, my needs aren't being met, but they actually don't even know what their needs are.
I totally agree. Yeah, that's great. So where I was going to go, though, here's what I want to ask. What scares Faith Dickey? What scares you about love and relationship and life? Or, how do you, what gives you the edge? Where do you find your edge of that sort of, you're pushing against it, but what sort of fear do you still have that you manage in your life?
One fear that it's much less present than it used to be, but I definitely have a fear of losing loved ones. So someone literally dying. It used to be more of a fear of them falling out of love with me, not loving me anymore. And I feel like I've worked on sort of the root of that. But, I think there's still a little fear that, like, I could just lose this person, that they could die in a car accident or something. And it doesn't occupy, like, I've done so much fear work through highlining. So fortunately, I feel like I have a good grasp on, like, not letting these fears balloon. But I would say that's kind of a fear that occasionally pops up for me. Like, what if this person died? If my partner goes climbing without me, it'll pop into my head. Like, what if he had a climbing accident and I lost him? And that's the kind of fear that can like bring me to tears, because it's the feeling of something out of my control, and like losing this person forever. And that's a scary thing for me to think about.
And so it isn't necessarily about being alone again. It's more about
it's
that specific
like
person.
losing that person. Yeah. And I think the other, maybe the thing that I struggle with and that I am still working on and will probably continue to work on is hearing criticism and not hearing "I don't love you" behind the criticism.
Oh, beautiful! Yeah, that's awesome.
Like to be able to hear criticism and not only hear "I don't love you" when somebody says that.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, well, so what's next? Where are you headed? What's going on? When is your wedding? So we can all, so we
show up,
celebrate, and show up.
So tomorrow I'm headed to DC for the People's March. So I wanted to show up and protest. I'm nervous. I'm very nervous about the incoming president, and I'm scared of what can actually happen to this country. We weren't on a great track as it is, so it's pretty terrifying. I'm very politically activated and passionate, and so I felt like it was a moment in history I really wanted to be a part of. So I'm going with a couple friends. I'm excited about that. I was planning to wear a giant penis costume with a sign that said, "No more dicks in the White House."
What happened?
Well, I took it out of the bag yesterday, and it's all like, it's not shapely because it's been like crammed in this bag for too long. And so my partner and a friend were like, "It doesn't look like a penis." And I'm like, "Well, no, that's the whole point." So it's also going to rain. So I might backtrack on that, but excited about that. Business-wise, I have a lot of bookings for the spring already, which is very exciting. It's my third year running my guiding business, Elevate Outdoors. I'm always excited about continuing to be a better business owner, to be a better guide, to reach more people. It's really inspiring for me to help people navigate their fears and get them outside their boxes and, expose them to these beautiful things that I'm so passionate about. We're getting married in September, so that's pretty exciting. I have some friends from Europe who are going to come. I used to live in Europe, so I'm very excited for friends from far away to come and just to gather all these people I love in one place. I've been kind of trying to get married for a long time now, so it's really nice to be on the same page and be in agreement about getting married.
Yeah. And I'm assuming you're not doing it on the side of El Capitan. You're going to do it in a normal setting.
We're going to do it in a normal setting. We could do it in a number of extravagant ways, and neither of us were like, whatever. We just kind of want to hang out with people we love.
Do them all day in your regular life.
Exactly. Exactly. We're not trying to make a viral wedding video. So, what else? We don't have any kind of honeymoon plans. I mean, we go on trips every year. We haven't gone any like huge ones, but it's fun to fantasize about what kind of big trip we might go on in the future. What else is going on? I go to Europe and go to Czech Republic in July to do the Women's Highline meeting that I organize every year. And so I always try to tack on some adventure in Europe while I'm over there, across the pond once. That's really it. That's all I've got. It feels like not much, but I guess to some people that sounds like a lot.
Yeah, you're heading into a whole new phase of life, which is exciting.
Yes. And theoretically, in the not too distant future, we will start trying to have kids. So that's pretty exciting.
And that's fun. That process is fun. Practice. Well, anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to share about your life and your journey. and Michael sharing your fiance with us a little bit.
Totally.
That's
And I'm,
exciting.
I'm only 35, so this is, I still have so much to learn. This is
Yep.
just what I've learned until this point.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, keep on climbing, keep the faith. It looks like you're doing great, and I'm so happy to have had a little bit of your time today. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on the show, John. And if you come to Moab, please come highline with me.
Woo! I'm scared. Get me scared
Well,
already.
I'm a great coach, so I can get you through it.
All right, I'm gonna kill the recording. Thank you. That was great. That's it. You did it. OCAT started the recording again. Yes. This is the other tale.